I'm Adam Todd, and welcome to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. I've always believed that the best way to engage students in a 21st century classroom is to immerse them with the transformative tools that will empower each and every one of them to excel in the world that awaits. My goal is to ignite the spark that propels you and your students in an advanced tomorrow, and your journey into that future starts right now. Classroom Dynamics is supported by Logitech. As education continues to evolve, so does Logitech Education, your partner in content creation for the classroom. With Logitech's cutting-edge technology, students not only learn but also become content creators. Whether it's in person or online, Logitech's tools are designed to inspire educators and learners alike. Capture every educational moment in stunning detail and edit, produce, and share your creative journey with ease. Logitech Education, inspiring the next generation of creators. For more, visit logitech.com/education, transforming classrooms one innovation at a time. Introducing the Zone Learn wired headset from Logitech, the headset that's designed for learning and built for schools. Here are a few reasons why Zone Learn is the best headset option for today's students and schools. It's optimized to fit smaller heads with features like soft ear pads, a cushion headband, even weight distribution and micro-articulating ear cups that move in all directions. The audio driver is engineered for speech intelligibility, so spoken lessons come through crystal clear. And the movable boom mic is designed for better vocal clarity. It's durably designed to withstand frequent cleaning and constant wear and tear. My favorite aspect of the Zone Learn headset is that it's fully customizable and sustainable for both the environment and school budgets. The swappable ear pads come in over-ear and on-ear options. The interchangeable cables come in USB-A, USB-C, and audio jack options. This means that the ear pads and cables can be swapped out without replacing the entire headset. Plus, the Zone Learn is backed by a 3-year warranty, making it a smart, long-term investment for schools. Get your students into the learning zone with an elevated headset experience. Learn more at logitech.com/zonelearn.
For over 20 years, Higher Ground has designed functional technology protection, helping students to work or learn anytime, anywhere. I'm Mark, president of Higher Ground, and I want to share with you how you can get a free sample of any of our rugged shells, sleeves, or clear backpacks. Visit hggear.com/sample and use your school's email and address. One thing, don't tell Alex because he'll be stuck with all the paperwork. Request yours and see for yourself how Higher Ground can help save your students and school downtime and money. Just remember, don't tell Alex.
Mark, what are all these sample requests filling my inbox?
Welcome to our season premiere and our third season of Classroom Dynamics, the podcast where we get into the exciting world of technology and education. Hi everybody, I'm your host Adam Todd, and today we're talking all about the world of personalization and personalized learning with insights from the book Personalized, Meeting the Needs of All Learners, as we sit down with authors Eric Sheninger and Nicki Slaugh. Eric Sheninger is a visionary in the field of education and a past guest of our podcast. As the founder and CEO of Aspire Change EDU, Eric works with schools globally to help educators unlock their potential and improve learner outcomes. His journey began as a teacher and then as an award-winning principal of New Milford High School, where his innovative leadership turned the school into a globally recognized model of success. His expertise lies in implementing sustainable change initiatives that transform learning cultures and boost achievement. Through research and evidence-based practices, Eric empowers both learners and educators to reach new heights, both with and without technology. Joining him as the co-author of Personalized is Nicki Slaugh, a trailblazing secondary principal known for her groundbreaking work in creating a personalized learning culture, along with a strong emphasis on technology integration, which has earned her national recognition. With over 2 decades of experience, Nicki has been a classroom teacher, an instructional technology coach, and a curriculum coach for grades K through 9. She currently serves as a secondary principal, driving initiatives in school culture, proficiency scales, and innovative teaching practices. Additionally, her contributions have led to numerous accolades, including Teacher of the Year and Model School Awards. Together, Eric and Nicki's combined expertise provides a comprehensive guide for educators striving to meet the diverse needs of all learners. So stay tuned as we unpack the principles of personalized learning and discover practical strategies to transform your educational practice. It's our season premiere, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Are you a dedicated educator searching for fresh and engaging resources to inspire your students? Look no further than Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers. Discover a treasure trove of easy-to-use lesson plans, vibrant visuals, and interactive activities designed to captivate young minds and ignite their love for learning. Unlock the potential within your classroom with Highly Motivated, from differentiated lap books to test prep passages on a multitude of topics. Our wide range of materials cater to most elementary and middle school grade levels. Join the community of passionate teachers who have already transformed their classrooms. Visit Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers and get ready to inspire, motivate, and empower your students like never before. Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers, where knowledge meets inspiration. They're the co-authors of Personalized, Meeting the Needs of All Students, and they're here to talk about their book and give us some tips in helping us create a personalized learning environment. I'd like to welcome educational authors Eric Sheninger and Nicki Slaugh to Classroom Dynamics. It's awesome to have you here today.
Thanks for having us. Great to be back.
Yeah. Eric was our first guest ever. So if those people who are listening now, if that voice sounds familiar, you've heard him before. And of course, check it out from last year. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about the two of you. And of course, where did the idea come to write your new book, Personalize?
Well, I was fortunate enough to listen to Eric present a couple years ago, and everything he was saying kind of spoke to my soul. I feel like I was having a hard time finding somebody that really wanted to make an impact and make change like myself. And so when I heard him present, I was like really intrigued. And so we started chatting after, and I was telling him all about some things that I've implemented at my school and my vision and different things. And we just really connected. And then, Eric, he was being a little firm, like, well, you can talk the talk. Do you think you can walk the walk? So I invited him out to Quest so he could see us in action and he could meet my students and teachers. Why don't you take it from there, Eric?
Yeah, so we've done it so many times. I'm going to do the best I can to fill in Nicki's bio very quickly. She's been in education 23 years. She started as an elementary teacher. She's been a coach, and now she is a secondary school principal doing amazing work at Quest Academy Junior High in Utah. And as she said, we met, but, Adam, you kind of know my story. I used to be a fellow New Yorker for 11 years and was a principal in the Northeast in New Jersey. Didn't believe in any of this stuff. And then I had my aha moments after dabbling in reality TV, which I try very hard to bury that, but it's all part of my story. And, we began to learn how to unlearn and relearn and really begin to look at how do we effectively meet the needs of our learners. So we kind of found our niche to personalize at the high school level, with flipped classrooms and our own learning academies, a school within a school model. And we did amazing things, improved achievement, yada, yada, yada. And now I get to spread the good word and connect with and work with amazing principals like Nicki. So after I saw what was happening at her school, it didn't take very long to see where there were aspects that I really didn't have that much experience or practical expertise in terms of personalization. So I knew where I had my strengths, but then after seeing what Nicki was doing, especially with self-pacing, choice, things like that, proficiency scales, that's when I said, let's write a book. And she then said, what did you say?
Pinch me now, because of course it was a dream of mine. So I was super excited.
And the rest is history. So, that was a year into our work. And then a year later, the book was published.
That's awesome. Let's get into the book now, Eric. Start right in the beginning where the introduction, you mentioned that personalized learning that it fosters a sense of ownership over the learning process. That's not only a powerful statement, but potentially scary for teachers to wrap their mind around, because although most teachers, I think we can all agree with this, understand that each student is an individual with individual likes and dislikes and individual needs that can vary from subject to subject, and that one size fits all approach doesn't always work. With all of the pressures in a classroom today, how do teachers take that idea of what you mentioned in the introduction and let go of what they've always known and shift that practice in order to embrace the personalized learning approach that the two of you laid out in the book?
First off, I'm so glad you didn't say learning styles because that has been debunked. And Nikki and I really stress the emphasis on learning preferences. We have different preferences to learn, whether it's working at our own pace, whether it's having choice in relation to, getting to the outcome, following a defined path. So, we worked really hard to come up with a simple tagline to what does this shift mean? And we came up with there's not just one right way. And this falls into when we look at practice, there's no such thing as a best practice. That's one way. If there was a best practice, we'd all be doing it with a high degree of fidelity and getting amazing results. There are effective practices. And when we come to personalization, which is not all students doing the same thing at the same time, the same way, which is not putting every student on iReady, iExcel, or whatever, fill in the blank for the adaptive learning tool where there's no discourse, no relationship, the personal and personalized. We want to ensure that for teachers, personalization in simplest forms is maximizing the time that you have with your students. It's not more work. It's not another thing. It is better work. It is the right work. It is where all learners get what they need when and where they need it to learn. The strategies are not new, but the shift to practice might be new for teachers. And when we shift our practice, we get uncomfortable. And that's a few things that we try to debunk in the book is once you find your groove, and I'm sure your questions are going to set up Nikki to talk about when you walk into her school, every teacher is doing it. Not because they have to, but because they want to. They see the value in it. They see how their most precious resource, time, is used effectively.
Yeah, time management, ownership, all that that all comes into play. So, Nikki, let's give teachers some really good practical ideas how to start this personalized approach. How do you do it in your school? What tips or strategies can you give teachers that necessarily won't break the bank of that limited time that they have to prep and deliver personalized lessons?
Okay, so the goal is to move away from compliance and make sure all of the students are engaged. So that's kind of how we started. We started discussing what can we do to encourage kids to come to school and to not be tardy, right? Especially in the secondary setting. So a couple examples. I allowed my teachers to decide per subject area how they wanted to personalize. I didn't come in with a cookie cutter approach saying we're all going to personalize the same way, right? So even within my school, within the subject, they all had voice in how they were going to do that. For example, in science, we focus on voice and choice, and we want to go deeper in the learning. So some examples are they can choose how they want to learn. Do they want to learn in a small group session, one-on-one with a teacher? Would they rather watch a pre-recorded video like the flipped approach of their teacher teaching it at their own time to where they can watch it, rewatch it, pause, watch it as many times as they want?
That gives them the ownership then. That builds that ownership component to it.
And also they could, some students like podcasts, so we might find a podcast that relates to that standard, or sometimes he brings in picture books or even content just in an informational article for those kiddos that love to read and annotate. So we really want the students to choose, how do you actually learn the concept? Then when we move into the practice part, which would be the assignments, we have a variety of options. Work one-on-one, work with a buddy, work in group, do hands-on projects, or do online simulations, or do a game, or again, work with the teacher. So there's all different ways to practice. And then same goes into when they have to prove understanding. Why do we all have to take the same test on the same day, the same way? So we give them a variety of options on how to prove. So that's how, say, science does it. But if you go to math, where that's a subject that you could build off prior knowledge, then we've created pre-testing opportunities for the students to take a pretest. If they can prove proficiency right off the bat, why would we make them do all those assignments and practices? So if they can prove proficiency, and we have a very high standard, if you were to be talking percentages or points, it would be 90%. We don't settle for the 80, right? So if they can prove proficiency, then they can skip that practice and move right to the next standard. So we actually have students that are in 8th grade completing 10th grade math currently at my school. But how that works is those teachers pre-record videos and they create playlists so that the kids can watch them at their own pace at their own time. It's a fully 100% self-paced within. As soon as you walk in the classroom, everyone is on different pathways based off of benchmarks we've given them. So we've created pathways. Teachers have created videos so that they can work at their own pace. Teachers are using data, live data. So we do formative assessments within the class period as little checkpoints. And as soon as they take that data piece on technology, using technology, we get that instant data. So we know right then and there, do we need to pull a small group or work one-on-one with them? So the teachers are like, I always tease them, they're like on-call doctors. Like they're always like, have to be Johnny on the spot. This kid over here might be on standard 3. This kid might be over here on standard 5, but they're just using data and meeting the needs of the kid. And it's so fun to watch.
And that's the actual reality of it, because we're not all going to have everyone on the same page at the same time. I think that's, first of all, ridiculous to even think that that could happen. But
Yes.
Just as a follow-up, how do the teachers, do they do this during prep work? Do they record videos at home? How do they get all that together so that it can go in 360 different directions?
Yes. So I always do my professional learning in June. So instead of waiting until August, I do a 2-day retreat in June where we start creating those things. And then where Eric focused on time, a lot of time is spent by teachers scoring assignments, especially in a junior high setting. You have 400 kids, 300 kids. You're taking all those assignments and you're scoring and you're inputting points. Well, when I decided to make this shift, that's the first thing I removed. Like Eric said, we created proficiency skills with emerging, developing, mastering, and extending. So we took the state standards and kind of created a roadmap for teachers and students so that provided them clarity where they're at. By doing that, then we could get rid of all those points in the game of school. So really all of the time that teachers spend scoring and inputting scores in a grade book that really have no meaning. What does 18 out of 25 really mean? Now they get to use that time to create meaningful and purposeful videos. So they don't feel burnt out. They see the purpose in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then the formative assessment or the exit tickets that they're required to do every day, that gives them the data right then, so they know how to fix and help improve and provide feedback right then in class or the next day. So we just kind of shifted the focus, instead of points, focus on learning. Do you have any questions about that?
Well, I don't think I have a question, but I think one thing that comes to mind is that really that upfront work, right? Everyone's doing that upfront work to eventually it should smooth it, in terms of time and prep and all that should smooth out later on down the road. So that's a great way to work it. If you're going to put up all that in at the end of one year to prep for the beginning of the next year, I think it's a great way to do it.
I just call it front loading and being proactive.
Yeah.
And the one thing also that is unique when you think about time to do this is that Nicki created a schedule every Friday is half-day release for teachers for professional learning.
Yes.
And when we think about personalization, time, it comes back to time with kids, time to plan, time to implement. So, if you really want it to work, you have to get past the excuses. You need to come up with, whether you're a teacher or administrator, if it's important to you, you'll find a way. If not, you will make an excuse. In Nicki's case, as the principal, she created a variety of different innovative ways to use the schedule to free up time for teachers. But also, our encouragement, if you are a teacher, is to really think about how you currently use your time. And is that actually helping move the needle with learning? Reflection is so important. John Dewey said, we don't learn from experience. We learn when we reflect on experience. So one thing that with personalized that we really hope that educators will get from this is, why do you do things the way you do them? How might you do it better? And what tells you if you are successful.
It's a great point. One of the key aspects of personalized learning is also recognizing that there's this nurturing feature. Each student's unique strengths and interests don't always align to everyone else, right? We're always thinking about how we're going to reach our kids. We don't want to lose enthusiasm either, but it could be a daunting task for teachers, especially with the amount of technology that they have to interact with, both on the student level and also with the teacher. So in the book, the two of you touch upon the role of technology and how the use of tech tools can go either way for, the hopes of a positive outcome. This is a bit of a loaded question coming up, but how can educators effectively identify and also leverage the individual qualities of students in a classroom setting and then personalize it to the point where it's actually effective by using the technology as a tool, not the be all and end all, but as a tool per se?
Yeah, and we have many ideas on this. So, first off, let's take a step back. Technology is not a silver bullet. It's not going to miraculously make you an amazing educator. So let's really look at the key aspect of personalize. How do we make learning personal? Maslow before Bloom's. Building those relationships with students is of utmost importance. Then, how do we actually build in relevance? If students don't understand why they're learning this, how they will use it, what tells them if they're successful, then as Nicki said, most will be compliant, although others might just be disengaged. Looking at implementing hooks in the beginning, Madeline Hunter called it the anticipatory set, to really build in that context. Then, going back to, I don't want to say basics, but again, personalization is not new. Maybe it's a new term, but how do we build in that relevance? How then do we scaffold our questions to get kids to actually want to talk to one another? One aspect that I routinely see an opportunity to grow across the country, across the world, is the need for discourse. Turn and talk, think, pair, share. But then to your point, how do you begin to make those small shifts to practice that, if done consistently, will help to not only personalize instruction, what the teacher does, but personalize learning, what the students do? After that discourse, there's a great opportunity to amplify student voice, where every student can go on a tool and respond and feel part of the lesson, and not have the fear of getting it wrong or, just sitting there idly. So, and Nicki talked about exit tickets. Exit tickets, in my biased opinion, is the most opportune way to integrate technology with purpose. Self-graded Google Forms, Canvas forms, Nearpod, Padlet, syncing it to your LMS so that teacher gets instant feedback as to how the lesson went. And, one of my opinions is, personalizing instruction becomes the gateway. But now I'll let Nicki take it over, because when you see not only what her teachers are doing in the secondary setting, but what we see teachers doing all over the world, is then moving from the instruction piece, whether it's whole group or small group, to purposeful use of technology aligned to choice activities, playlists, flipped lessons, self-pacing. Take it from there, Nicki.
All right. So I think you talked about the importance of school culture and relationships and connections, right? And so in order for our teachers to create that safe spot where students get to meet with them one-on-one and sit through conferences and feedback, it's really important to remove the teacher from the front of the room, because a lot of teachers will say, well, when am I going to meet with those kids? So in a teacher-centered classroom, you're talking to the students throughout the class period and sharing information to them, but you're not having time to meet one-on-one. So if you move to a student-centered type classroom, you would need to use technology, right? So I think it's really important we use Google Classroom. It doesn't matter what platform you do. So all of my teachers have a Google Classroom, and then everything that they create is on their Google Classroom. So once they after they hook them and get them engaged on what and find purpose of what they're going to learn, everything is on that Google Classroom. So their choice boards or their self-pacing and their playlist, it's already embedded in there. So then they can start working independently on those activities. And so you're using technology as a resource. You're not as an adaptive tool to take over. Do you see what I'm saying? They're putting all the different choice activities based off their interests or their needs off the data that we've received. That removes the teacher to where they can circulate be watching for that live data based off what they're doing in their practices, and then they can pull them and meet with them one-on-one. If you create proficiency skills, once they've submitted proof of understanding or taken a summative assessment, you want time as a teacher to sit down one-on-one and meet with the students to go over their rubric, their proficiency skill, and provide personalized feedback to them to help them learn and grow. This allows the students to feel safe to ask questions because they're not in a large group setting. This is where that bond begins. So I think really it's how can you use technology creatively as a resource to remove you from the front of the room, which will allow you to have more time in small group or one-on-one to get to know that student and provide personalized feedback or reteach something a different way based off their needs and create a safe environment.
When you see not only the strategies in Nicki's school, but in what I see across the country, whether it's station rotation, centers, a choice board, must do, may do, playlist, flipped lesson, it's not every task involving tech. So I don't want to use the word balance, but it's very purposeful. So if it's a choice board with 4 options, 1 option might involve tech. If students are working self-paced on a tech tool, the teacher is then doing small group targeted instruction without tech. So we want to make sure that the technology is not driving the experience, because then kids become little robots and they learn to hate the tech. And it's just too much information coming at the teacher. What is he or she going to be able to do with it? So just wanted to add that, that caveat is, technology should not drive instruction. It should support learning. Learning is relational. So those conversations with the teacher and with the students epitomize personalization.
And it's good to take the kids off the tech for a little bit too, right? So we could probably all agree to that one. Nicki, I know in the book you talk about free range learning environments. That kind of what you were talking about has that feel of that. I love that quote unquote free range phrase, free range learning environments. So what can you say to that goes hand in hand with that tech or not so tech lesson?
Well, I think it's what we were just talking about within those choice activities, that you provide a variety of different innovative ideas for your kids, right? And so I could walk into a classroom and see a group of kids on the floor building something, where I could see another group with the teacher. I could see another group out in the hall, using their phones, creating a video. Other kids could be using Adobe Express, creating a podcast with it, with avatars. So it's just walking in that room and seeing everyone maybe working on the same standard. If it's, say, science, a foundation class that we don't allow, not every class we do self-pacing. Like I said, some of the subject areas felt we'd rather go deeper versus faster because they didn't have prior knowledge from the previous year, a history class or a science class, whereas English or math would do self-pacing because they could prove proficiency. Does that make sense? But when you walk in those classes, just seeing everybody's learning, but they're learning in a way that they choose to do. And then the teacher's moving from group to group. And it's so beautiful because they're all engaged and the conversations are still based around the same standard. But when you take a child and you provide them choice and a variety of options, it's just unbelievable versus when you say, okay, everyone turn to page 34 and we're all going to do this, like the engagement, right? So I think, or even in like an ELA classroom, for instance, you get to know your students because you're meeting with them, so forth. If you have some that love pop culture, some that love computer science, when you are asking them to read articles, provide a variety of articles that they're going to read, okay? But then they're all still trying to master that same standard, but they get to choose an article of interest versus everyone reading the same text. So with the use of AI, you can also take an article and you can drop it in. So this is how I know you kind of you read about how we implement AI, but it's a simple way of, all right, I'm going to take an article and get a variety of different reading levels based off the same topic if you want to differentiate within the class, or you can ask them to create an article based off a specific topic for your kids. So using AI is more of a resource to personalize, not to create the whole lesson. Or in math, some of my teachers, if they really love Chick-fil-A, they will literally create story problems. They'll drop in the standard and say, create relevant and real world examples using Chick-fil-A, so that if they know that they love Chick-fil-A as well as some students, and when they're actually doing the math problems, again, it speaks to them. So there's some examples.
Right. It's transferring that responsibility right from the teacher to the student to kind of pick and choose once the teacher has kind of set forth,
Yes.
the rules, so to speak, the game plan, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you kind of like make that connection, what we talked about in the book. Free range is about high agency practices, voice, choice, path, pace, place. Free range is about differentiating content, process, product. So free range is about understanding how we implement MTSS, RTI to support the needs of all learners. So the one thing that we emphasized in the book was looking at these strategies that are not new. Differentiation, not new. We often differentiate content, not process and product. Pace, can kids work at their own pace within reason? Path, if we put all kids and ask them to climb that same tree, well, that's not how we learn. So why would we do that to kids? Place,
right.
Virtual, outdoors, flexible seating with flexible pedagogy. So using that free range metaphor, we're really just thinking about simply how do we learn best, as adults, and how do we transfer that to what's happening in our classrooms?
100%. We are talking with Eric Sheninger and Nicki Slaugh, co-authors of Personalized: Meeting the Needs of All Learners. Nicki, this one's for you. Personalized discusses high agency strategies such as voice, choice, we just kind of mentioned this a little bit, path, pace, and place. How can these strategies be implemented practically in a classroom to enhance student engagement and learning outcomes without making it feel like it's an uphill battle to do so? So in other words, what other suggestions do you have for teachers, especially new teachers who are just starting out? This is their first year coming out. What kind of strategies could you offer? But I want you to hold on because we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll answer that question when we come back in 30 seconds. Every classroom has the potential to be extraordinary, and the Logitech Reach adjustable content camera is your partner in making that happen. With its flexible arm and clear video, you can now showcase everything from detailed drawings to live experiments, ensuring that every student is engaged and involved. Whether you're teaching in person or online, Logitech Reach helps you connect with your students in a whole new way. Ready to take your lessons further? Visit logitech.com/reach and elevate your classroom to a whole new level. Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. Before the break, I asked Nicki if she had any suggestions that she could offer up to teachers, especially new teachers who are just starting out with personalizing their classrooms. Let's get into some suggestions for them. What could you offer up?
Well, what I do at Quest, which again there isn't just one right way, but how I approach it is I sit down with my new teachers right off the bat and we go through their standards and we identify the power standards and create the pathways. Then we sit down and we start working on their proficiency skills because we really believe in teacher clarity. We want to be clear and transparent with all of our students. So I love it because we take the standard and then we create an I can statement from that. Then we really hone into that specific verb. And then I help the teachers create a roadmap of what emerging, developing, mastering, and extending would be. So once we've created that roadmap and identified what the goal is, what is mastery, after that, we create the prove it, which is the summative assessment. And then we start digging deep and deciding what different ways could students prove understanding. So I think it's really important with the new teacher to have a roadmap, a guideline, and then to create the summative assessment. After that, then we start thinking about how are we going to hook the students? How are we going to engage them? What can we do to have them understand the why of what they're learning? And then after that, we start working on how can we create multiple ways to practice. So let's talk about all the different ways that students love to learn, rather it be through reading, through videos, through podcasts, through creating, through one-on-one or small group with the teacher, right? And so then we sit down and we brainstorm all different ideas based off the standard again, but come up with a variety of ways. So how we do it, again, start with a standard, create a proficiency scale, create the summative assessments, then we create the hook, the practices, the choice activities, the variety of ways that students can learn. And then we make sure we have formative assessment, the exit tickets and the closure built in every single day so that I help my teachers understand you're going to use that data to pull small group or one-on-one the next day. I hope that answers your question. Eric, what did I miss?
So, teaching is daunting. When we think about Some teachers with classes of 25, 30, 35, even 40, and they might be thinking, how do I actually do this? I believe in it. I understand the why, but how do I do it and what can it look like? So, the right way is your way, everybody. So we're not here to say that's a great thing about personalization. You get to choose your pathway. So go back and think about how you were trained. What were those key concepts? And they still have value. I often go back to the work of Madeline Hunter, and Madeline Hunter's work is in every single evaluation framework. Doesn't matter if you use Danielson, Marshall, McCrell, it doesn't really matter. But what do we want to do when we think about effective teaching? We want to review prior learning. We want to check for understanding. We're going to implement closure. Those are your opportunities to amplify voice. And guess what? You can use individual whiteboards. You can use dry erase surfaces. You can use Post-it notes where every kid is able to respond and they show, hey, here's my response. You can also use tech. Don't think you have to do it for all three, but how you involve every learner, how you give them voice. What we have found is that becomes a catalyst that actually builds momentum, builds confidence to begin then shifting from whole group direct instruction to a myriad of other strategies that we've mentioned before.
It's a great roadmap, both of you gave, and it's great points too, because you want the teacher to personalize his or her instruction, just in the same realm that you want the kids to learn in their own personalized, focused way. So it's a great roadmap to kind of go through, especially what you said, Nikki, earlier, is how just to build one step after another. And it almost kind of lays it out for itself. It kind of unfolds by itself then.
A lot of teachers are like, well, they love to, they love to stand in front of the room and teach. So at first the question is like, I'd love to teach. Do I get to teach? So I help them understand you're still doing those same mini lessons. Some of my classes do still do whole group instruction, a mini lesson. We just keep it to 10 to 15 minutes because we know that the attention span of children nowadays, you really can't go past that. And within that 10 to 15 minutes, they either are using a Nearpod where every couple slides they ask a question. So they get that data to see right then, did they understand it? Do they need to stop and reteach it? Or do they move on? So I love tech for that. Or what he said, we can do turn-in talks or Post-its or whiteboards. But what I was really trying to get at is you are still going to do those same lessons that you would do whole group that we all have loved, but you're doing it one-on-one or in small groups. So I'm not removing the I do, we do, you do process or any of that. It's just, we're just personalized when you use it, and you're using it based off the data and based off the students and your kids within your class. So I want to make sure teachers know that you still get to do all those fun things that we love to do as teachers. It's just personalized.
Exactly. So we touched upon this earlier with artificial intelligence. It has the power to revolutionize education. I mean, over the last year, it has just exploded, right? So what are some ways that teachers can harness this power right now to help them get started in personalizing as a tool for them? Let's give them some entry points that they could use that is so approachable and so meaningful to them that it kind of helps them get into that mode of personalization.
Well, we have to tread lightly because AI in itself is not going to personalize learning. It's not going to facilitate relationships. It's not going to facilitate learning. It's not going to teach the lesson. And when we think about the personalized aspect is, can teachers and leaders identify where is that opportunity to grow? And how might AI be able to give me some insight? For example, as Nikki and I work with schools across the country, you can take data reports on iReady, iExcel. You can put it into AI, and AI can then give you suggested interventions for those students, which then can be used in a personalized strategy such as station rotation, tier 2, or tier 3 supports when you're using choice boards, must do, may do, self-pacing, flipped lessons. You can also use AI if you're stuck on a standard on how to make it relevant. That's challenging for the lower elementaries. It's very challenging for upper level high school classes, but you could take that standard, put it in AI and say, how can I make this standard relevant for 11th grade students in this calculus concept? It can also help you create resources such as get you started on building an effective rubric. building a effective choice board, scaffolding questions. So we understand that it's a great resource to help save time. But what's most important, again, we've mentioned this over and over again, is the personal relationships that the teacher and students have. So I don't know what I miss, Nikki.
I think you did great. I think the same as how we say we need to always hook the students. So I feel like some of my teachers, if they want to come up with a song that is aligned with the standard that the kids would sing or dance to, right? Just simple things like that. So I think if you use AI as like you're going back and forth and you're asking questions like, help me create an engaging activity based off this standard, to using song or using video. So it's just helping them get those creative ideas, but they need to be very specific in what they ask it based off the knowledge they have from the specific students in their class. And so I think that's where my teachers really love it, is it just helps them come up with those ideas a little bit faster, and then they can go through and pick and choose what they feel will fit. Maybe what they do in first period isn't going to be the same in fifth to hook them, because the students in those class periods are different and they have different interests. So I just think they've been creative with it. And like I said, the reteach process, because at Quest, if they don't reach mastery on the summative assessment, they don't prove understanding the first time, then we have high expectations that they need to meet with the teacher again in a class period that we call mastery minutes to receive a reteach, where they learn it a different way. So then they practice again, and then they are reassessed to ensure that learning really happens. We don't allow the kids just to keep moving through the standards. We want to make sure that they actually learn it. And so sometimes when you're having to reteach that same content a different way, AI is helpful, because you can, like you said, you can get a different way to intervene and some different interventions to try. So again, just having it kind of be like your coworker or your, a member of your team, and just ask specific questions that are geared towards the students.
Right. Because listen, AI can't build that strong relationship that you want, right? You can't do that. You could ask it to give you, you can prompt it to ask for help and assistance as a tool to give you better ideas and maybe branch out a little bit further, but it's not going to make that personalized connection, because it's an AI, right? It's not going to happen. But you did mention this, so we do have a couple minutes left. Before we end, what are some ways that you guys, administrators, can actually go ahead and help to foster those relationships? You do mention this in the book, to help support school culture, to create classroom camaraderie. Like what are some of the things that you could offer up that could be a main focus for teachers?
Right, Nikki, you go first.
Where he said I have professional learning every Friday, I made sure that I created that schedule even in a secondary setting. Eric mentioned I started off, for my first 10 years, I was kindergarten, first, second, and third grade teacher. So I applied majority of these strategies in the elementary, and we did have built-in time to work together and collaboratively as teams, right, within our PLCs. When I moved to a secondary setting, I felt like we didn't have a lot of built-in PD time or professional learning time. So number one, but by creating a schedule where my teachers had time to meet together, to collaborate and problem solve. Number two, we celebrate wins within our entire school. So every Friday we celebrate successes as adults, but then I have my students on Friday celebrate their own successes and self-reflect and talk about what they're proud of, what they want to improve on, what did they learn this week. So we're providing a lot of opportunities to self-reflect, to self-assess, to celebrate wins. I allow my teachers, every time a student masters a standard, how can we celebrate learning within the class? So we have gongs in math where they actually get to ring the gong. So even though everyone's on different paces, once somebody masters that concept, they get to ring the gong and everybody claps. In ELA, the teacher has like a Polaroid camera where they get to take a selfie of themselves and it prints out a picture and they hang it on a photo wall. So there's all different ways. So just shifting the focus to celebrating learning. And when you remove points, another way to celebrate learning, instead of focusing back in the day, if you got like 11 out of 25, that could possibly be kind of a negative impact where they're seeing 11 out of 25, right? So really, instead of focusing on the negative, what they missed, always focus on, well, they did get 11 right? So when you're using your proficiency skills, when you sit down to do that feedback, talk about everything they did right, and then obviously provide feedback to help them grow, to continue to improve, because the goal is mastery, the goal is learning. So we're always positive, if that makes sense, from the top down. And I try to model within, I support my teachers support each other, the teachers support the students, just everyone's a team.
All right. So I'm going to give 4 + 5. It'll make sense when I'm done. We emphasize 4 things in the book in terms of creating a culture that leaders can do. And we really emphasize creating an environment where it's okay to take risks and fail, number one. Number two, creating conditions to collaborate, which Nicki just talked about. Number three, feedback. That's going to be one of my 5 in a minute. And number four, professional learning. So I'm going to come back to 2 of those. So as leaders, whether you're a teacher leader, building leader, district leader, first and foremost, you got to build those relationships. Without trust, there's no relationship. Without relationships, no real learning occurs. You have to help people see the value. You have to build them up. You have to give them the space to learn at their own pace, which is a pivotal aspect of personalization. Number two, you got to provide not just resources, but supporting research. As we wrote the book, we aligned so many peer-reviewed studies to support our points. It's not just our opinion. Here's what works. So when we look at learning, there's a wealth of research out there. As leaders, you can use Google Scholar, or you can use Consensus AI, which actually searches peer-reviewed research. Also, we talked about clarity. Where do you want that foundation of the work to be? We talk about the relevant thinking framework in our book. How do we get kids to think at the highest levels of DOK, Bloom's, but how do we get them to apply their thinking in relevant, meaningful ways? What can you do to provide that clarity? Number three, you got to collect and analyze evidence. Here's what teachers tell us all the time. Eric, Nicki, we know the why. How can we do it? What can it look like? The more that you collect evidence that shows you're not doing more, you're doing better work, you're scaffolding your questions, you're building relevant context, you're providing feedback, you're assessing, collecting and analyzing evidence to validate, but also to create a pathway where people see it's manageable. Number four, feedback. Feedback has to be timely, practical, and specific. When I visited Nicki's school, she got anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 words of feedback from me before the end of the day. How, as leaders, you develop learning walk protocols. You be consistent with it. You be transparent. You involve your teachers in the process. Finally, professional learning. As leaders, you need to learn with each other. If you are administrators, you need to learn with your teachers. You need to model. Don't expect others to do what you're not willing to do or have not done yourself. You have to determine the efficacy of your professional learning, and you have to make sure that the professional learning is personalized so it helps each individual do their best work.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That was fantastic information. I think teachers are going to take that and really run with that. That was really phenomenal. This has been such an engaging conversation. Glad we had to learn the chance to learn more about how teachers can effectively personalize teaching for not only themselves, but for their students in a meaningful way and also a practical way, right? If you haven't had the chance to pick up this amazing and comprehensive guide, be sure to go out and get your copy of Personalize, especially at the beginning of the year here. This will help you tremendously. Before we go, tell everyone where they can go to purchase the book and where they can go to follow you guys on social media.
Well, first, before that, people know how they want to know how to do it and what can it look like. In the book is a digital appendix, which has example after example. We have our version of anchor charts to help with your clarity, but we also have examples from K-12 classrooms. We call it out throughout the book, but in the back, there's that digital appendix for you to find your way forward. So I'm easy, ericsheninger.com, all over social media, but everywhere.
The book is on Connected Publishing and Amazon. I think you asked where can they find the book too, and then I'm NickiSlaugh.com, so you can find me anywhere either also.
This has been great. For those who have been listening, thank you for tuning in today, and make sure that you share what you've learned or any takeaways or reflections that you've had, and tag us on Twitter at Class Dynamics or Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. Of course, we always look forward to hearing your thoughts on our episodes and sharing the different ways in which you're using what you learned, especially with what you heard today. You can also help support Classroom Dynamics with as little as $3 a month at classroomdynamicspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Once again, I'd like to thank educational authors and educational leaders Eric Sheninger and Nicki Slaugh for joining us today. Thank you for the time. It has been such a pleasure having both of you on to talk about such an intriguing and necessary way to reach our students in today's world. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Classroom Dynamics, where knowledge and inspiration meets innovation. I hope you've enjoyed today's discussion and found it both insightful and uplifting. As always, my goal is to provide you with practical strategies, engaging stories, and powerful insights that can fuel your motivation as an educator. I believe that when knowledge and inspiration do come together, incredible things can happen in your classroom. And for all of you who may feel that it's too late to strengthen your craft, I challenge you to make it your mission to do so. You've worked hard to get to where you are today, and it's never too late to infuse new life into your work. So why not make today that day to do so? I'm Adam Todd, and you've been listening to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. You can follow Classroom Dynamics on X at Class Dynamics or on Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. If you haven't already, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you know a teacher who may benefit from today's show, please share it with them. We'll be back soon with more captivating conversations, inspiring stories, and strategies that you can implement into your everyday routines. Until then, keep igniting that spark in your classroom and never stop believing in the incredible impact you have as an educator. You're more powerful and inspirational than you think. Did you miss our ISTE Live 2024 specials? If so, catch up on all the excitement and innovation from days 1 and 2 on the conference floor from the Colorado Convention Center in Denver, Colorado. In these episodes, we brought you inspiring conversations with educational technology leaders from BrainPop, Merlin Mind, Higher Ground Gear, Promethean, Kami, Kahoot, Typing.com, and more. So whether you're a tech enthusiast or just curious about the future of ed tech and education, this episode was packed with valuable insights and actionable takeaways. Don't miss out. Tune in now to get inspired and elevate your teaching game.